Welcome to the Indie Women Podcast, where we introduce you to the fearless women taking their filmmaking careers into their own hands, showing you how indie films get made. And here's your host, Heather Turman.
Welcome to the Indie Women Podcast, a show dedicated to the women in the indie film world who have found success bringing their projects to life on their own terms. And I'm your host, Heather Turman. Very happy to be here. I love bringing this show to the world, so I really hope you've been enjoying it. If you have, please be sure to subscribe and even drop us a review. This is, still a new show, so listener feedback is highly appreciated and encouraged. I want to know what you like, what you don't like, all of it. So please let me know. This week, you guys are in for a real treat, as usual. I talked with writer-director Elaine Chu. Elaine's first feature film was a horror movie called The Purgation, which Spinechillr called one of the best horror movies I've seen this year, if not the best, and Horror Cult Films declared Elaine Chu is a name to look out for in the future. And so not only does she drop all kinds of information about how she got the money for her feature debut, but she also talked about being a working director and how to get your foot in the door, what it's like directing over Zoom during the pandemic, and now that's continued as a thing, and also how to navigate a career in the realm of commercial directing. Lots of great insights you don't want to miss. So, without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Elaine Chu. Welcome to Indie Women.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's so nice to be here and talking to someone about directing and film.
Yeah, I mean, you have an incredibly busy resume, very impressive. You've been working, you've worked hard. I had the luxury of getting to see Purgation, which, by the way, is and I misspoke. The trailer for Purgation. I didn't watch the film yet, but now I definitely am because I know Tiffany Q, who starred in it.
Oh, you do? Isn't she a darling? Oh my
She's
God.
Great. Yes.
Such a pleasure to work with. And I cast her after watching her in a play, which is something that's quite unusual in Los Angeles because who watches, indie plays nowadays? But she just was like so magnetic on stage. And I was like, I really hope I get to work with her someday. And when she came to the audition, I was like, I remember this woman. She was just like the best part of this like small indie production, but it's fate.
Yeah. No, that stuff sticks with you. And that's why it's never, when people, especially because Los Angeles is not a theater town, people tend to turn their nose up at it, but those things do happen. So I'm so grateful to hear that that's how you found Tiffany. Before we, because we've got, listeners don't know Tiffany, but I'll give you, I'd love to hear, because I was just talking, The Purgation is your feature film that you wrote and directed.
It's my baby.
Your baby. So I'd love to hear just in general, I'm sure we'll talk about that plenty, how you got your start in the industry, sort of when you decided to transition and say like indie film is the route that I'm going to go, like nobody can stop me. Give me the scoop. How did you get started?
So I was one of those directors that started off as a production assistant. I put in my hours as a set PA. And then I thought I would become an assistant director because I was the first AD on a couple productions, but it's super draining. And as you get older, you start to realize, do I want to be 40 and standing on my feet for 15-hour days yelling at people? Right. It's not sustainable. I love it and I still do it once in a while, but directing is what I want to do. And I knew that as a first AD, it would take a really long time to make that jump. So I took a break and started focusing on more narrative and creative projects. And now I work as a full-time director for Two Science. So doing
Which is so amazing. Yeah, congratulations. I mean, that's amazing. And it's hard for anyone to make their living as a director, let alone a woman, let alone a minority woman like you're doing it, and it's very impressive.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a long road, but I really encourage more people to at least try, especially Asian American women, because I think we're told to stay in technical roles and not focus on anything too creative, especially if our parents are immigrants, because they want the best for their kids. And it's very risky to move to Hollywood and try to pursue filmmaking.
Yes.
But if you try, there are people that succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's been such a great year for the Asian community in general. The last couple of years, with a couple comedy acquaintance of mine, got Superstore and then Crazy Rich Asians. And, you're just seeing, thank God, the doors are finally opening, which makes it much easier for the people watching at home to say, like, to see themselves, and say, I can do that too. If they can, I can.
Exactly. Yeah. When I was growing up as a kid, all we had was Lucy Liu, and now there's so many more actresses to look up to. And now, Chloe, we have a female director we can look up to.
An Oscar, yeah, Academy Award winning director, absolutely. Is that so? Were you like first generation? You mentioned immigrant parents. Were you born here?
Yeah, I was born here. My parents immigrated from Hong Kong and China. And I grew up in the middle of Wisconsin in a very small town. So
Okay,
it
cool.
was a big difference coming over to California, but I'm glad I made the move.
Yeah, absolutely.
Different industry out there.
Totally. Did you go to film school then, or did you just knew that you kind of wanted to be in the industry, so you said, I'll go and I'll start at the bottom as a production assistant? What was the...
No, I did not go to film school. That's actually a regret of mine. I think I would have made more contacts early on, but I went to school and I majored in history. I was on that pre-law track, and I took the LSATs, failed miserably, and realized that I would not be a very good attorney. I've always wanted to make films. So I was like, I could keep trying to do stuff to make money because that's what my parents want me to do, or I can try to pursue something that's a little riskier, but I would be happy doing it. I did not do that. I ended up becoming a teacher for 10 years, and I taught high school history. But during that time, I worked as a PA, and I gained experience here and there until I gained the confidence to start working full time, in film.
Yeah, that's great. I love hearing that you doubled down. Like you were teaching, but then you also were like picking up production assistant work so you could really get your foot in the door, get that experience and get started. Cause I feel like that's, the goal of this show really is to, indie film I've found is yet another field that's, dominated by men. That's a boys club. It's like, it's a part of Hollywood, indie film, and it's supposed to be freer, but then you still get so many men who still run the show. And I was like, there are so many talented female filmmakers out there that are really doing this, that are really making their living. And so I always want to hear how, people got started, because it's overwhelming, it's to realize how many different steps there are to getting from point A to point B and building a resume and all that stuff. So it's nice to hear that you had to do that you were working other jobs and continuing to pursue this until now you're finally a working director. That's great.
And you're a working producer. I saw.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, that's very impressive.
Yeah. I mean, did you produce, I guess we should real quick. Did you, so once you started doing your own films, tell me how long did it take you, and eventually what led you to getting that first feature made, and how did you get it made? And, did you start just doing a handful of shorts and then hit the feature finally? Or was it more like, did you dive in and then you did more shorts after that?
That's a great question. I think the smart thing would have been to do more shorts to kind of develop my voice and gain more filmmaking skills. But at the time, I was engaged, and I was thinking that, hey, I'm going to get married soon, and I might have kids, and I may never get the chance to direct, because, unfortunately, that's what happens to a lot of women. You can't be on set of a baby. It's kind of difficult. Mm-hmm. So I was like, if I really want to direct a movie, it's now or never. I've worked as a production assistant and a first AD for many years already. I know my way around a set, and I have this screenplay I've spent years working on. I'm ready to do it. And, I can at least say I have no regrets after I get married and have kids. So I made Purgation with, the help of so many wonderful friends. My producers, Jeremy and Stephanie, had my back the whole time. And then my fiance and I decided to not get married after all. So that did not work out.
I'm sorry to hear that, but if it's a good thing, then that's okay.
Yeah, it worked out. I think we went our separate ways. I stayed in Los Angeles. He went back, to the Bay Area, and now we're both happier.
Good. I think, if you've got dreams of things and it doesn't fit in with somebody else's, timeline or their plans or their dreams, then you've got to part ways. Especially this is when you want to be a filmmaker, when you want to make films, it's such a demanding such a demanding field to get into. It can be all, all encompassing. It can take over your whole life because there's so many different steps, especially once you do get a project out and then you're working on the next one. It's a big process.
It really is. And honestly, you mentioned how men are kind of like in control of a lot of these positions, and they're very lucky to have wives that can stay home and take care of their kids. I think times are changing, but it's still very difficult for a woman to have a child and expect her partner to do the child rearing and the housekeeping.
Absolutely.
I don't know many female directors who have kids and a family.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. So interesting that you say that. Yeah, it's very true. It's very true. I mean, you really have to get to a certain level, and then you can do it and you have to be able to afford to take a few years off is, I guess, the gist of that. So did you, for funding for your feature, did you crowdfund? Did you find investors? What was the process?
So I did Indiegogo. We weren't very successful, but luckily I was able to get 2 people to be private investors. And because we sold the movie eventually to Gravitas Ventures, we were able to get that investment back to them. So that was really awesome.
That's a win in indie film.
Yeah, that is a win. And then honestly, we had non-union actors and very generous crew members who donated their time. And so some people got day rates, some people donated and volunteered. So
yeah,
yeah. For every first feature, you get that opportunity. I don't think I could ask that of anyone now. Like I really draw the line in asking people to work for free.
Totally. Once you've done it and you're like, okay, I've cashed in some favors. Now, if I do it again, I've got to make more money or have more money to share.
Exactly. Yeah. But for your first feature, I think it's something you have to do to like make your calling card and get it out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And so where did you shoot it? How many days? What was the process?
It was 25 days, I believe. So the asylum where most of the film takes place, it was supposed to be this underground cavern that the kids explore. It's actually this abandoned paper factory in Gardena.
Very cool. Very cool.
It was a very creepy place.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, just even in the trailer, it looks like it. It totally seemed like an underground. It totally seemed like what you said. Did you hire a location scout? Did you go and find your own locations for it? I did the location scouting on my movie. So that's why I always want to know, how involved were you? Yeah.
Same. A location scout would have been amazing, but we did it on our own. Our producers helped me a lot. My UPM, Stephanie, she actually worked right next door to the paper factory. So she helped hook us up with that.
Cool.
And it had a couple different rooms that we were able to convert into like a hotel room and like other places that we could like set dress to make it seem like other locations, even though it was just one giant building.
Totally. That's good. Yeah. I mean, that's what you have to do, you have to be creative with your space. With the feature Stuck that we did, one of our locations called for a courthouse, which is, if you want to get a courthouse, you pretty much have to pay for a studio that has a courthouse set, and those can be $7,500 a day. They're quite expensive. But luckily we'd found a museum that it has like a courthouse because it's a museum, and it's set a particular way from some year or something like that, and it's stuck there. And so we got it for $1,500, just trying to be creative and find things. And then we had the director's house. We changed her daughter's bedroom into a massage parlor, just doubling everything that we could.
That's amazing.
Those are the things you got to do. You have to be willing to, I think, to think outside the box,
I think I know of this courtroom you're referring to because I watched a trailer to one of the features that you worked on. Is that the one Joel McHale is?
Yeah.
Yeah. Very impressive.
Yeah,
That's
totally.
amazing.
It's a museum. Yeah.
Wow. That's so smart.
Yeah. I mean, otherwise, I don't know how we would have done it. We probably would have had to cheat something and make it a little like less of a cinematic court scene, because financially we wouldn't have been able to get that done. And then as far as the rest of that movie was mostly one location, somebody's house that we rented for like 10 days. But that was something that we secured by going door to door and knocking and saying, hi, we're doing an independent film. And luckily we found people who were like, why not? So
Oh my
that,
God. Wow.
yeah,
That's
very lucky.
nerve-wracking. It's basically like being a door-to-door salesperson.
Exactly. But because it was a first film, like you said, you're willing to do those things, and you realize that you have to cut as many corners as you can. And if you can't afford a location scout, if you can't afford a lot of that stuff, it falls on the producers to do that. You just got to make it happen. So
Definitely. I'm always jealous of directors who have like a bigger budget to work with. But if you think about it, it takes more talent to make a good story happen if you only have a few $100, right? I mean,
absolutely.
yeah, that's something to be proud of.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. And same. Um, so yeah, so I checked out a lot of the other stuff that you've worked on. Cause you've done a massive number of short films. Is that something that do you love doing shorts, or do you do it to secure other work, or sometimes do you do it to try to get budgets to make those into features? Can you kind of tell me about your journey in short films?
Sure. I mean, I would not tell anyone to do a short film for the money. It's purely, working on your craft, meeting actors. And I think as a director, unless you're booking TV shows and movies all the time, the opportunity to direct is pretty rare, right? And you have to keep working on it. And the best way to do that is with a short film. And you can keep the budget pretty low. I think for the first short film I worked on, it was maybe $1,000. From there, it's gone up, of course, but
Yeah.
if it's something you can self-finance or at least get people to help with.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah, I did two like no budget shorts in the last year, like no budget, just to play around um and work on making it happen in a day. Like, you know what I mean? Those were kind of the things I was trying to work on, and seeing how much I could fit in um with as little money as possible. But I am gearing up. I want to do another short probably in the next year or so. Well, not even that, probably in the next 6 months or so. That I put that money where it is, so that I can really get a nice sample of, because I didn't direct Stuck. I only produced it. I wrote and produced. So having gone through all that, when you put that much effort into something, but you're not the director, you're
Mhm.
like, okay, I want to direct, especially when you
Right.
write something, and it
I'm
doesn't.
curious, why didn't you direct Stuck? Like, it's your story.
Yes, it's something that I regret, but then also don't. It's one of those things I feel like at the time my writing partner, we had sold a script in 2015 that didn't end up getting made. And so we were like, well, this doesn't change our lives. We got to check, but nobody's going to see it. So I said to him, let's write a one location that we can produce ourselves. And so we did that. And when we were finished writing it, he was like, well, we need to get an experienced director. And I had assumed that I had the idea for it. Like, I just thought that I was going to do it. And then when
Mhm.
he said that, I think I just clammed up. I think I got so like insecure, thinking like, oh, he obviously doesn't think that it would be me who did this. So I
But
was
you're like
like,
right in front of him. You're like,
I
I'm the experienced
know,
director. Look.
I know. I know, but I did. I got sheepish and never said another word about it. We interviewed. And the thing is that, the woman who did direct it is, very, very experienced, has been in this industry for 30 plus years. It just, she brought a wealth of knowledge. And so at that point, it's like, she knows what she's doing. And so I do feel like I learned so much from the process that I don't regret it, but I do regret having put in all that effort without getting the final say. Like, now I know for sure that I will always direct what I write for sure.
Excellent. Yeah, I hope you do. Like, if you put in the effort to write an entire screenplay, I think you're the best person to make it come to life. Unless you really, really trust the director. I mean, it's your voice.
Absolutely. And so those of you listening, take it from Elaine.
Right. I'm going to quick turn off the light right here
Oh,
because I'm
sure,
noticing that I'm getting a lot of sunlight.
sure.
There we go. Awesome. That's more natural.
Yeah, no, all good. So that's great. So I love your journey. I love how dedicated you've been to it, and how you were able to get that first feature off the ground and then get it to Gravitas, which is kind of the, I guess, king of independent films in terms of distribution. From there, are you? I know you just sent a really great project to me, Quarantine for Two, which I definitely want to talk about. Um, I mean, in fact, yeah, we can just talk about that now. It's the pandemic happens, and what are we supposed to do? And I'm so impressed that you found a way to be creative. Do you want to share how the inception for that came out and how it came about and how you got to work on it?
Definitely. I think so it started with West Side Comedy Theater in Santa Monica because I used to do improv and stand up with them.
Okay, yeah, I love the theater. My roots are in stand up, so I love West Side.
That's
Yeah,
great. Yeah,
yeah.
I think you were the two-time finalist for one
I
of their
was West Side
contests.
Showdown. Yeah.
Yes, amazing. So we kept trying to do online shows on Zoom. And so I got used to doing comedy using that format. And I was like, hey, looking at the square, this is essentially a camera. We could shoot something, you know? And I really want to do that and experiment as long as we're under lockdown. I want to keep directing. So I talked to my friend Jeff Thompson, who is single, not anymore. As far as I know, he has a girlfriend now. But at the time, he was single and complaining about how difficult it was to get a date. And then with the pandemic on top of that, it was impossible. And so we kind of brainstormed this idea for a parody of The Bachelor. And we decided to like improvise a lot of it and bring in a lot of our influencer friends to be the singles, you know, to try and vie for our bachelorette's attention. And we cast Diani to be the bachelorette. And interestingly enough, she is very game to like meet people. So Diani, she's out there and she's single and she's beautiful. I hope she finds someone.
That's great. Yeah, it's really impressive because the series, so you did this all over Zoom, you directed all over Zoom, and it feels like like I felt like I was watching a dating show, like legitimately, it's paced very well. It's not jarring to see everyone talking via Zoom. How did you find that to be directing over Zoom? Was it challenging? Was it fun? Did you feel like there were any obstacles that normally wouldn't be there other than physically being, you know what I mean? But was there any other obstacles? How different was it?
So we made sure everyone recorded their own screen. So post-production editing was definitely a challenge because we had footage from every single actor. But in terms of directing, we had the luxury of just pausing and like being like, hey, could we do that again? And which is a lot easier to do on Zoom than it is on a set because people have to keep adjusting the lighting and fixing the mics. I mean, for this, it was just like, hey, let's stop and try it again. So I think Zoom made that a lot easier for sure.
Sure, yeah. Because I mean, it's great. I'm so grateful that people were being creative during this time, and not even just creative. Like I feel like a lot of people got a lot of writing done, but like actually filming something. You talking about creativity earlier, and you were saying, it speaks to somebody's creativity when they're able to do a lot more with a lot less. And that just is everything right there. You did a series, when we're all in a pandemic where we're not allowed to leave the house. So kudos to you on that. And so that's on Instagram. That's on Instagram, IGTV, right?
Yeah, and we were able to work with World Kitchen to actually use those views to raise money for people who are affected by the pandemic and needed like meals.
Oh,
So
that's
we're really happy
great.
about that as well.
Very great. Yeah, that's awesome. Congratulations. Yeah, everybody listening, check it out. It's on IGTV, and it's Quarantine for Two. Amazing. And so what's next for you? Are you working on another feature? You said you're doing a lot of commercials, so that's probably keeps you pretty busy. What's that like? Like, what are you do you want to go more in the narrative route again, or are you pretty happy right now where you're at?
Oh, absolutely. Narrative is where my heart is. I think working in commercials you kind of lose a little bit of yourself because you're directing, but you're also giving creative control to the clients and the agency. They're really the ones who call the shots, and you're essentially there to relay their notes to the actors, which is
Right.
fine because you get paid to do that. But you can't really spin a new story or be creative. It's very like, punch into numbers and do this shot.
Yeah, gotcha. I mean, but it pays much better than most narratives. So there's that.
It does, 'cause, corporations have plenty of money.
Yes. Well, that's great. So are you working on anything in particular now?
Yeah, so my friend Miriam is a producer, and she and I actually were working on a screenplay that I wrote during the pandemic, speaking of plenty of time. And we submitted it to Sundance, and it made it to, I guess, the final round. So we're just waiting to find out if it actually got in.
Oh, that's great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Is it what's the genre?
It is horror. I
So is
definitely like scary
yeah,
movies.
cool. I love that.
Uh,
So that's, I mean, I didn't mean to cut you off there. Just right when you said horror, I immediately was like, I was going to ask you if that was your preferred genre because that was your first feature. So you love horror?
I really do. If you ask me why, I think it would take me a while to give you an actual answer. I think it just excites me. I love getting scared. It's like my roller coaster, it's like the safe feeling of knowing that you can be terrified, but you're still in your home.
Yeah, totally, totally. And do you feel like because the horror, like that audience, the niche audience of horror films is so loyal and it seems like really big. Did you feel like you benefited from that with the Purgation?
Oh, definitely. I had no idea like how loyal and amazing, the horror fan community is. Like I still get emails and like DMs from people who are just like so curious about the ending of Purgation and just asking me if I could tell them what my intentions were, and it's amazing. I love it. And I think that's another reason why I love horror because you don't need a famous celebrity to be in your movie. Like it helps, but it's about the story and whether or not you can connect with the audience.
Absolutely. And it's almost like that thing where, like, the more dilapidated the set, the better, Whereas, like, in real life, or I mean, not in real life, but in other features that aren't in the horror genre, everything needs to look shinier.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Exactly. You can be a little bit low budget and the audience is more forgiving.
totally, totally. That's a good way to put it. I love that. I love that in general. Um, yeah. So tell me about in general, like what your overall, the, you have the one feature under your belt, you've got the screenplay. Do you have, are all your shorts in the horror genre as well, or?
I would say they're more dark comedy.
Okay.
Two of the shorts I worked on were produced by Great Hair Productions, which is a comedy, I guess, sketch group. So we definitely, all the actors in that collective are more comedians. So I wrote scripts to kind of make use of those strengths.
That's great. That's great. I love that. And in fact, I'd love to talk about that because at least for me, with when we did Stuck, um, being in the comedy community, I find it's such a great community to be in to draw talent from because
Mhm.
what somebody's stand-up act or what they put forth via improv, you just get such an amazing sense of what that individual's true energy is versus like with an actor, you can see what they've played on their reel, but you don't get a sense of that individual unless they play versions of themselves only. But you said that you wrote things that could service their talents. um, were those all people that you met at West Side Comedy Theater when you were doing improv?
I would say West Side, UCB, Groundlings. It's kind of like a hodgepodge of everyone, and the Pack Theater. That's another place.
Okay, yeah.
We're all in the same community in a way.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I really, yeah, I feel like I try to say it to anybody that I meet that's interested in film is that if you are interested in comedy, go out and see live comedy because you will find people and they will speak to you and you're like that's what I was looking for.
Absolutely. Especially improvisers. Like I love working with people who are comfortable enough to go off book. As a writer, I'm very particular about the story, but as for the actual words, like, do it once or twice, but then make it your own. I'm totally okay with the actor saying, their intention with their own spin. And that's
Absolutely.
usually where like the magic happens, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I love that you said that too. I think so many people, especially directors who do write their own material, I guess the fear sometimes from actors is that the director's going to be too precious with their words. But it's so nice to hear that you're not, because I'm not either. I feel that same way. Let's get it the way it's written, but then also put your own spin because absolutely that's when the magic happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so do you feel that your improv background really helps your eye as a director, or just you in general, like the way that you're able to communicate with actors? How do you feel that that's benefited you?
I mean, yes, and is what you're taught, it's the first rule of improv. And I think that really helps when talking of actors, because every actor is very different. They have different needs. So if you're able to quickly understand where they're coming from, and like in an improv scene, you can respond a lot faster and build a scene with them, right? I
Yeah.
think a lot of directors, and it's fine. They're focused more on the technical side of directing, whether it's setting up the shot list or making sure the production design is beautiful. They forget that the actors are not props, that they're
Mm-hmm.
people, and you have to talk to them like they're people.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And not only that, but the actors, the performance, like the production design, great. Like I am a big fan of production design. Like I really do believe that, the setting, the location is a character. Like you want it to, feel, you want that world to come alive for sure. But at the same time, like the actors are, the most important piece, because if good acting is in place, people will be able to sit through it. If it's bad acting, if they're not, giving the right performance, we'll get bored. So it's really important to be able to communicate, I feel like, with actors as the first and foremost thing of a director, for
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely. And I think we both come from an acting background, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've done, but mostly I never really considered myself an actor. It was always that I did comedy. But
Mhm.
then I feel like because I did stand up, I was more comfortable like auditioning and stuff. So I started doing it. And like,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I guess because when I first moved out to LA, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I know I wanted to be in entertainment, and I knew I wanted to do funny things and that I liked to write. And so I did dabble in improv a little bit. And then that led me to doing some short films that I acted in. But ultimately it was stand up that really helped me become a better performer and have more people ask me to perform in their stuff. So yeah, I can't stress the benefit of that, of that
Mhm.
comedy world, because it's filled with talent, and it's filled with like an incredible amount of inspirational energy and talented people, and you just want to be around that. And I think it's like osmosis, it helps you be more creative and come up with more ideas. So
Exactly. And I think I'm missing a bit of that working, in commercials, because you have to use corporate speak, on set and with the people you work with. It's not an improv club. So,
totally.
yeah. And when you're back on set, I think that banter comes back, and it's really nice.
Sure. Yeah. And so speaking of that, like commercials, when obviously when a big corporation is backing something, or a big ad agency, and you mentioned, less creativity is of course available to you. Um, but do you work with completely different crew members than you usually would with, like, if you were doing a narrative feature? Would you tend to keep your same core group, or how does that work for you?
So at Tube Science, I work with the talent, which is focused mainly on influencers and micro influencers. So all the directing I do is pretty much virtual, because the influencers are filming in their own homes.
Right.
It is more work on my end, because I have to basically create the shot list and the copy and everything for them, and direct while they're there. But I would say, like, we don't have much of a crew. It's basically just me, the editor, and then the influencer and the
Gotcha.
painters. Yeah.
But so then in terms of like your short films and your feature, do you have like a DP that you always like to work with? Like, do you keep that same core group of collaborators around, or do you like to mix it up?
I like to mix it up. I think I've worked with so many amazing DPs in the past. Currently, I'm dating a very talented cinematographer as well, and
Have you guys worked together yet?
we have on a short film.
Cool.
But I think he understands I want to work with other people as well, though. So
That's
yeah,
good.
exactly. I think I'm still trying to find my voice in terms of cinematography, like what I
Sure.
want.
Yeah, because you hear that, a lot of directors, they find that camera person and they stick with them, throughout the entirety of their careers. But I think it takes, it's like Goldilocks. You have to sample a few,
Yeah, absolutely. And you also kind of like, you get better at it, as a director, you're quicker about your shot list and crafting what you want right away. When I first started out with directing, it took me forever to figure out like what I wanted. Storyboarding was like a complete mystery to me. And now I'm just like, boom, 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 this is what I want.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And so how do you feel like I mean, have you ever edited? Do you edit stuff at all, or have you?
Yeah, so interestingly, during 2020, I worked as an assistant editor for a show. So I've always worked as an editor. That was my first professional job where I was
Oh,
like, oh
okay.
my gosh, this is intense. But it taught me like the technical skills I need to be a lot faster. So I can hopefully edit more of my own projects in the future. And, I have done that. I edited Quarantine for Two. It's a very valuable skill. I'm not saying a director should have to know how to do everything,
Right.
but it definitely helps. It really does.
Yeah, I find that editing seems to be the thing that if a director has experience in it, it helps them just with ease of workflow, because when you're on set, you can almost direct and, edit in your head. So you kind of know just that thing of like, yep, we can go from this to this. We got it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Get the coverage that you need for sure.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. So when you, as far as like the ad stuff, when you're doing commercials, and you're doing it, I'm just so impressed by the fact that most of it is, did you get the job before you went on the pandemic happened?
No, it happened, I guess, maybe 2, 3 months ago. So it's a very new
Oh,
job.
okay. Okay.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
but
I'm still,
so it still makes more sense. I mean, obviously influencers are all over the world, so that's going to have to be remote no matter what. But yeah, it's interesting. I feel like, do you feel like being in this situation enabled you to be like, I know how to do that because I made a web series, and I like, did that assist you in getting the job?
oh, definitely, because I have the skill of being able to direct over Zoom. And that's something I have to do pretty much every day. And I think a lot of directors, they are only able to do it on a set where they can physically be next to the actor. And to do it virtually, it's kind of a new skill. It's for 2021.
Yeah,
And I
totally.
hope it's something they start teaching kids in film school because it seems to be the future.
It does seem to be the future. I don't think this is going away.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Well,
embrace all the technology.
absolutely.
I love that. What do you think about iPhones? Like, could you see yourself? Because I did a little research on iPhone filmmaking during this year,
Mhm.
and I experimented a little. Got a couple anamorphic lenses to play around. And to me, the merits are that you can put it anywhere. A lot of times with the camera, you can't put it in a particular, if you've got a really small cramped space, or whatever. What do you think about that? Is that something you'd ever do, shoot on an iPhone?
I'm very tempted to. I feel like my boyfriend would scoff at the idea. And I know most cinematographers, they don't want to lose the ability to work, with a RED, with a really high-end camera. But as a director, yes, I want to move faster. I don't want to wait around waiting for the set to be lit. That's always my biggest gripe, waiting for lighting,
Yeah.
even though when it's done correctly, it's beautiful. Um, so the iPhone is very tempting for me to just be like, I can get the story done a lot faster and with less crew. But I
Yeah.
would have to sacrifice, the beauty of the shot.
Of course, absolutely. And I think like that's the thing, yeah, is that I've watched a bunch of, comparison videos. And it's so impressive what the iPhone can do. Like it's insanely impressive what it can do. But yeah, it definitely still doesn't have that as cinematic of a quality, I think.
Mhm. It is
Um,
getting there though.
yeah, it
So
is getting there.
crew members should be ready for that change. I think a lot of jobs that we're used to seeing on set are going to start shifting, and people need to be ready.
Yeah, that's a good advice to think about. Yeah, jobs will be shifting. Do you notice as technology does continue to develop, do you notice that certain roles are sort of becoming more combined, or separating, or dropping off completely? Have you witnessed that at all?
I think the term director is giving way to content creator. Some people are still uncomfortable with the idea that like YouTubers get more views than a lot of movies in mainstream theaters, but I think that's happening now. There's definitely still this prestige attached to like opening in like theaters nationwide. But if you look at the numbers, like your average YouTuber is more popular than, a blockbuster sometimes. And
Absolutely.
so I see that change of like the role of the director. Um, it's what everyone wants to grow up to be, but you have to like think about whether or not that role is going to exist 20 or 30 years from now
Yeah,
for all
exactly.
these content creators.
Totally, exactly. And like that feeds into the concept of editing, because now it seems like even actors who, doing self tapes, like my
Mhm.
wife's an actor, like when we
put her on tape, it's a whole ordeal, like we've got to film, we've got to light, then we've got to film, then we've got to cut, then we've got to send it, So I feel like more and more as technology, advances, everyone's sort of expected to know the basics at least.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think everyone's getting better at it. Like maybe a decade ago, actors would be like, you're making me do this. But now it's like, okay, it's expected. For every audition, you just have to self-tape and do it yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And what about you when you audition? Do you prefer to bring people in the room, or do you prefer to cast people or are you cool with self-tapes? How do you feel about that?
I'm cool with self-tapes. Before I, seal the deal, I have to meet the person just to make sure they're not crazy.
Totally.
You can get from the screen.
Totally. That's a very valid point. I used to hold, like, the first couple short films I did, I held, real life auditions at a theater. And people won me over in that, with that, set, like with that format, because like I had this one woman for this web series I was doing, and it was like a little web series thing that we never ended up putting up, but she came in and she just stayed in character the whole time as she's talking to me after her scene. I just couldn't stop laughing. And I'm like, it is you, like you are it. And then I've used her in a web series since then, but it's that thing, where if it was just her tape on just her self tape, I certainly would have thought she had killer energy, but I wonder if she would have been able to win me over so completely, So there is that like in-person thing where when you're having an energetic, connection with someone and you can see they're not crazy. I think like you said, you got to make sure they're not crazy. There is a benefit to that. So there is like that thing where self-tapes are great, but yes, meeting them in person, I feel like is imperative regardless.
Yeah, I think in Los Angeles, it probably is better if the self-tape process continues though, because like what actor wants to drive an hour now to,
Yes,
do the audition? I think unless it's for a big TV role, we're okay just doing it from our living rooms.
absolutely. I mean, I agree with you in that regard for sure. Yeah, there was something I was going to ask you when you were talking about distribution and then YouTube. The trailer for the Purgation was on a YouTube channel called Indie or Movie
Indie Clips.
Yeah. I noticed that they have a massive following or like a massive subscriber count, tons of views. Is that like a distributor? Is that an individual, company? How did you find them and seek that out and get that up there?
I have Gravitas to thank for that. I honestly didn't do too much marketing after I sold the movie. So that was all them. And then also Osiris Entertainment, which was also a distributor.
Okay.
So I don't know what magic they did, but it went.
But that's cool. That's good. And it's nice to see that distributors are seeking out, like you were talking about, people are afraid of like YouTube, but it's there and they get a lot of views. That's great. That's great. I would just be curious how much it's helped, I mean, like we already said, the horror genre has a massive following and a really loyal audience. So you've already got that going for you. And then you've got Gravitas behind you. But it sounds just like a successful, first feature all around, which is really impressive. It's hard to do. So.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for saying that. I mean, it hasn't translated to like TV jobs quite yet. I think that's my next goal, to eventually move on to that genre. But that's a big leap. And I think it's something I'm still trying to figure out. Like, how do you get from directing commercials and short films to actually becoming DGA and working on a television set?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and I think like that's the thing, people listening, that people don't fully realize when it comes to getting those jobs. I mean, TV is backed by major corporations, right? Some of the biggest corporations in the world, ABC and NBC and Netflix, of course, Hulu, Amazon. And it really is its own beast. It's a whole different avenue. Like you can, unless you're winning Sundance, you have to have a whole different entryway. It's not, it's not just make a good film and now you can direct TV. It's a whole different thing. So.
Yeah, it really is. I think when I make it, I'll come back hopefully and talk to you about that.
Totally. Yeah, I look forward to it. You definitely will. I don't doubt it. You definitely will. So yeah, real quick. I mean, I feel like this has been a great conversation. So tell me, you mentioned the script that you've got going for Sundance. Directing is obviously your favorite thing. When it comes to writing, do you always want to direct your own stuff, or are you open to directing other people's material in terms of narrative?
I think it's easier to direct your own writing, and I want to push myself as a director to be able to take someone else's story and direct that. It's a skill, and I think I'm still learning how to do that right. Two of my short films were written by other people, and I think it was a collaborative process. I have yet to do a project where a director is like, "Hey, just take this and make it your own." I think collaboration is always key. So you make sure that the writer's voice, doesn't get lost.
Absolutely. I love that you said that. Exactly. Collaboration is key. That I feel like that's where we went wrong on my film. Is that somewhere along the line we stopped collaborating, but it's a good film. It's a good film.
Yeah, I watched the trailer and I definitely want to watch the full movie. I'm a huge fan of Joe McHale, so
okay, yeah. I mean, he was
hilarious.
great, and we were so very fortunate and lucky. That's something that, when someone has, it was like a friend of a friend scenario. Will you do a favor type thing? But he, with big names like that, the way to get them, of course, I'm sure to work on something super low budget is, of course, can you come help us out for a day? And it's a day. And so he played a judge in Stuck, which enabled us to have him sort of bookend the movie. He's right at the beginning sentencing her, and he's right at the end after her transformation. So we were very fortunate with that. So yeah, and he's great in it. He steals the show, and he improvised a lot during his scenes. Like, I have so much great footage, like on the B-roll, that is just Joel McHale spitfiring joke. And it made it so much fun. So
Right, I can only imagine. My gosh.
yeah, it was great. So yeah, Elaine, this is wonderful. Can you just, before we, head off here, I'd love to give you a little time to share all the stuff you're promoting, where people can find all your work. I mean, I'm going to include links, with the description of the podcast, but just if people are listening and, they like to do it that way.
Oh, thank you. Well, hi, my name is Elaine Chu. Please check out Quarantine for Two on IGTV. It's hosted by Jillian Ferry and stars an amazing cast of people just trying to look for love. And if you love horror, check out my feature, The Purgation. It's available on most streaming services, and it's a good scare, especially if you are afraid of nuns.
Love it. Oh my gosh, I'm definitely watching it. I've been getting into horror movies these days, so as well. I love to feel suspense, like you mentioned.
Excellent.
Like feeling on the edge of my seat is a fun way to enjoy movies. So.
And thank you for hosting this. Like, I really appreciate you bringing on like women directors, and I really, really hope this inspires more women to get into this field. I think it's intimidating. As a first AD, I've had to work on crews of all men, and I think once you get your legs underneath you and you realize that you deserve a seat at the table, you get that confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. I agree with you, and I that's the goal. And so thank you for being a guest and helping do that, helping inspire other women.
My pleasure.